Hi everyone, I'll be reacting to Tucker Carlson's video titled, "It's Time to Decide, America First or Lindsey Graham's Death Cult." So let's watch it.
Good evening and welcome and happy anniversary. Tonight is the 1-year anniversary of Trump's second election to the presidency. It was a year ago tonight that Donald Trump not only won, but won a majority of the popular vote. And not only won a majority of the popular vote, but won with a coalition that was broader than any Republican coalition probably since 1984 with the Reagan landslide. So a 40-year coalition. And at the time, looking at not just how many people voted, but who voted, it seemed really obvious if you were interested in keeping the left at bay and the Republicans in power for, say, the next generation or two, you would copy exactly what Donald Trump did because no one else has done it in 40 years. He created this amazing, not just landslide, not really a landslide, but it was an amazing victory in an environment in which most people assumed you couldn't have an authoritative victory because the country is just too closely divided. So it was an amazing thing that Donald Trump did a year ago. So the election was a year ago. That means the midterm election is a year from now, and the next presidential election 2 years after that. So it's probably not too early to start thinking through what comes after Donald Trump. No disrespect to the sitting president, but of course, there's going to be something after him because he can't run again. And needs to say people are thinking about that, and not only are they thinking about it, they're already arguing and fighting about it. There is what Politico is calling a civil war in the Republican Party. And it's over, of course, identity, because the only wars we have in this country, the only sanctioned wars we have domestically are about identity, BLM, anti-Semitism. But of course, that's not really what they're ever about. These are proxy wars. These are wars waged on behalf of people who aren't directly participating for reasons that are never openly stated. And this war is actually about what comes after Donald Trump. Does the Republican Party, the party that now has power and a lot of money, revert to what it was before Trump, or does it continue to evolve in the direction that Trump has steered it? That's the question. And on that question hangs a lot. Well, control of the most powerful country in the world, control of the free world, such as it is, the shrinking free world, and an awful lot of jobs for people and an awful lot of military power. So there is a lot at stake in this contest. So consider the two choices here. You can go with the UZ, which is basically neoconservative foreign policy, libertarian economic policy, the Republican Party of the think tanks in Washington, of the Wall Street Journal editorial page, of all the deep thinkers in the Republican Party, deep thinkers in the Republican Party, deep thinkers, the ones who are always invoking the same three Reagan quotes and quoting Tocqueville incorrectly and, doing their little, we're erudite impression. Or does it continue to become what it is currently becoming, which is the party of Donald Trump? Well, what is that? What is MAGA exactly? How do you make America great again? Well, Donald Trump, in his sort of signature way, which is to say never quite spelling everything all the way out, because he's not very ideological, but instead sort of leading by implication and by action, the position of Donald Trump in the last election was America first. And what does America first mean? America first means, very simply, the U.S. government should act foremost on behalf of American citizens, which is to say every big decision the U.S. government makes should keep in mind the top of the list of concerns. How does this affect the people who pay for this and who I represent? And again, most people thought that was their system that we already had. Turns out it wasn't. Donald Trump awakened all of us to that. The system was not acting in the interest of the country. It was acting really without reference to the people who live in the country. It didn't care. And it was acting on behalf of a bunch of other different imperatives. And Donald Trump steered it back to where it was supposed to be in the first place, which was acting on behalf of America. That's what America first means. This was not just a popular message. This is the most popular political message that any candidate has delivered in many, many generations. And it's popular because, it's self-evidently true. Who wouldn't want that? And that message is the message that drew a record high number of famously black voters, Latino voters, voters of all kinds, just American voters united by a belief that the U.S. government ought to represent them and drain the swamp and no more pointless wars, et cetera, et cetera. But they're all branches of the same tree, which is America First, which is not only a non-threatening message, it's really the only legitimate message that a leader of America can send. And it's the only legitimate principle that can guide.
But that's obviously not what Trump's doing. Obviously, it's probably Israel first because that's how it's going. Trump has made a bunch of promises, and some people say, besides Epstein files and this and that, he has completed every promise. Really? He's completed every promise? I mean, stuff is still expensive. Like, what's really changing? This feels like the same president almost. Like Biden. Biden's just insanely bad. I mean, which one are you gonna choose? You can choose Republican or you can choose Democrat. Democrats say all this weird crap. They think they mean good, or they just act like they mean good. But when they say it, it's just like, holy crap, that's insanely evil. And then they do it anyways. They tell you they're going to pretty much do it, and they do it. And then Republicans are like, oh, we're going to stand up for your rights, your freedoms, and all of this, and act like they're so good, but then they don't do any of that. And it's just like, which one do I choose? Well, I guess stay in the middle. You can't pick both these sides, because they're both the same. They make too many promises, and I only see words. I see no actions.
Any American leader. So that is the winning message. If you're hoping to keep the Republican Party dominant or make it into something more positive than it currently is, cleave to that and you will win. It's super obvious. There's like no person who thinks about this for 6 minutes who could disagree with that. On the other side is a return to the Republican Party that we had before, which is a party that has all kinds of other agendas, most of which are never publicly revealed, and that spends a lot of its time policing its own members. Now, what does it attempt to achieve by policing them? Well, it attempts to achieve silence. It wants them to shut up about what is actually happening. And what is actually happening is that on the foreign policy side, which is the side that Washington cares about because it's got the most money and the most power, you can literally kill people, and there's no power greater than that. Our foreign policy is not wholly dependent on the whims of Israel. Of course, we have, acting in lots of parts of the world that have nothing to do with Israel, but it is unduly influenced by the concerns of Israel. And in some cases, the U.S. government has acted, and these are all well known. The Iraq War, for example, has acted in ways that hurt the United States in order to help Israel. It has put the aims of the foreign power.
Israel wanted that regime change.
Its own interests. And that's immoral. It's illegitimate. It's extremely unpopular domestically. And it just doesn't work over time. That's not sustainable. There's no way to justify that. So rather than trying to justify it, they scream at people and tell them to be quiet and read them out of the movement and call them names and threaten them. But ultimately, because it's not a winning message, it cannot win over time, particularly if people are allowed or somehow manage to describe it accurately. And unfortunately for the guardians of the old system, the old Republican Party, people have been allowed to describe it accurately, mostly because Elon Musk opened up X. And, when he did that, you get all kinds of filth and nonsense and lies, but you also get some truth, actually quite a bit of truth. And one of the main things that people are telling the truth about that they didn't tell the truth about before is that our foreign policy really doesn't have much to do with what's good for the United States. And once those words have been uttered, they can't be taken back, and they change people's minds, and the polls reflect the fact that they have. People's views are different. So in the face of this kind of inevitable change of heart, collective change of heart in America, where both parties are like, wait, why are we doing this? The people who are benefiting from the old arrangement, which only continued because it was maintained by threats and silence, those people are going absolutely bonkers. And they have been all week, and they're claiming it's about one thing, the Holocaust or something like that. But no, really, it's about who controls the Republican Party after Donald Trump. That's what it's really about. So ignore the moral posturing. This is a power struggle, as all political parties have from time to time. And this one just happens to have a lot of emotionally unbalanced, hysterical people with no limits who have access to social media, so they're scaring the crap out of everybody. But it's really kind of a conventional power struggle.
I don't know, I think it's going to be like J.D. Vance versus like AOC or freaking Gavin Newsom or something like that.
So who are the players in this? Well, some of them are in the pundit class. The more ludicrous ones are in the pundit class, but some of them are actual sitting politicians. And if you were to choose one who symbolizes what we're actually actually debating and the stakes of this conversation, it would have to be Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham is a senator, a senior senator from the state of South Carolina, one of the most conservative, reliably Republican states out of 50. And he has been in Congress since 1994, so that would be 31 years. And he is running for yet another term as a U.S. senator. He's 70 years old. He'd like to serve till he's 77. And he has the support, not simply of the White House, he has an endorsement from the president, but he has more donor support probably than anyone who's ever run in the history of the United States. I mean, Lindsey Graham has so much donor support, and donors, just as a numerical question, probably represent, 100th of 1% of the American population, but have a great deal higher proportion of the money. He's the most popular candidate they've ever backed. He's like a higher IQ, less grading Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis. And so they'll be backing him, and all things being equal, he will be reelected. And so why does this matter? Well, it matters not because Lindsey Graham is like a horrible person. I mean, he may be a horrible person. The truth is Lindsey Graham is actually a very charming person and a very interesting dinner partner and a fun person to be with, hilariously funny. I met him for the first time. I was his seatmate on a campaign bus in 1999. He was a member of Congress, and we spent a couple of weeks sitting next to each other. And by the end, I thought to myself, I love this guy. He's hilarious. Always a joke. Always has a drink in his hand. Like he's genuinely a cheerful person. Probably fun to play golf with. So the reason that this is an important race is not because Lindsey Graham is like Mark Levin, someone if you were stuck in an elevator with him, you'd have to obviously kill yourself because you couldn't handle it. He's not that. You'd enjoy being stuck in an elevator with him. The reason it's so important is because Lindsey Graham is the living symbol of the old Republican Party, the Republican Party that did a lot, almost as much as the Democratic Party, to destroy the United States. And so if he is reelected next November, that will be a sign that actually the democratic system doesn't work. Lindsey Graham's views are not popular. They are despised in the state of South Carolina. His views, if you were to disaggregate Lindsey Graham from what he believes and just poll Republican primary voters in South Carolina, do you agree with this? Lindsey Graham would be less popular than the Democrat because his views are repugnant to Republican voters and to Trump voters. And so if he were to get elected anyway, it would tell you that the system doesn't respond to the concerns of voters. And therefore, the system isn't working and isn't legitimate because the point of the system is to respond to those concerns. And so a lot is at stake. If Lindsey Graham wins, it will be the most dispiriting thing to happen in American politics in a very, very long time. So if Kamala Harris were to win in the last, a year ago tonight, it would be horrible. She'd be an awful president.
Yeah, big time.
Even worse than Biden, insecure, fragile, weird, dumb. You can just imagine, nightmare. But at least you could say, well, she was elected by a party that kind of agrees with her. Kamala Harris got elected because the Democrats are insane. Okay. What's the excuse if you're a Republican voter, if you're a Trump voter, for electing Lindsey Graham? Hard to think of one. So just want to spend a couple of minutes before we go to one of the men challenging Lindsey Graham in the Republican primary next June, Paul Dans, who we're going to talk to in a minute. We want to go through a couple of things you should know about Lindsey Graham. So if Graham gets reelected, it'll be because the true Lindsey Graham, his record, his views, his priorities, his dark impulses are all lost in the haze of propaganda that surrounds him, and people only know him through the political ads that his donors paid for. So we think it's important for people to know who he actually is. So we're going to start with a clip. We could do this for like 8 hours, but we're going to do this for like 20 minutes because we want to get to the guest. But we're going to start with a clip from this past Saturday, I think this past weekend. And Lindsey Graham was giving a speech at the Republican Jewish Coalition, I think in Vegas. And he was one of many speakers who were getting hysterical and threatening violence against Republicans who don't agree with them and jumping up and down and raging about the Nazis.
That's messed up.
The Nazis. 80 years after we defeated them. And Lindsey Graham was probably in some ways less hysterical, but he was the kind of most important office holder at this event. And he said a couple of things that really reveal the program precisely. Here is Lindsey Graham this last weekend.
He recognized Jerusalem as capital of Israel. Why? Because if you got a problem with that, take it up with God. He's the guy that did it, not Trump. So I just want to say, I feel good about the Republican Party. I feel good about where we're going as a nation. We're killing all the right people and we're cutting your taxes.
Right there. Stop. Killing the right people. What do you mean, killing the right people? That is messed up.
So there are a couple things to notice about this that really tell you everything you need to about Lindsey Graham. First, and we left the context, he's defending Donald Trump. He's saying, not defending, Trump is probably pretty popular in the room, but he's saying, remember, Trump's like a great president. Why is he great? Well, because he moved the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. What? I mean, okay, you can make a case for it or not, but why should I care exactly? It's a purely symbolic move. It has actual consequences internally in Israel, but it doesn't even pretend to improve your life. Graham didn't get up and say, he made prescription drugs cheaper. He's going to lower your health insurance, make it easier for your kids to buy a home. He got the cities under control. They're now safe. You can use the parks. He's improving the schools. You couldn't send your kids to public school. Now you can. You can use the emergency rooms again because he's deported 10 million illegal aliens who were hogging the space, which is where we currently are. No. The reason you should love Trump is because he moved the embassy, the U.S. embassy, in a foreign country from one city.
Seriously, that's such a ridiculous thing to love Trump about. Holy crap. Oh, not gonna love him because he ended 8-7 wars, or he's deporting people out of the country who came here illegally and commit crimes and do sick crap. But they're gonna love him because he moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, U.S. Embassy. That's sad.
To another, huh? Why does that matter? Well, Lindsey Graham explained why it matters. Because God commanded it. Oh, if you don't like that, take it up with God. So God, it turns out, and this may be in one of the non-canonical books in the scriptures, God wanted the U.S. State Department to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like kind of a basic tenet of our faith. It may even be in the catechism. What? And of course, given the venue, no one raised a hand and said, I'm sorry, Lindsey Graham, I'm not a Bible scholar here, but how do we know that God wanted the State Department to move an embassy, 80 miles or whatever the distance is, from one city to another? How do we know that's God's preference? But this is kind of a tick of Lindsey Graham. So he explained recently that if you have a problem with Israel, God will kill you. And that would include the United States. He said,
that's
I'm
messed up.
him here, if the United States abandons Israel, God will abandon the United States and kill us all.
Wow.
We'll die if we don't support, as he calls it, Israel. Israel. This is the Mike Huckabee pronunciation, Israel, which may be some kind of dog whistle meant to telegraph that I'm really on your side. It may be like the Kyiv rather than Kiev. When you call it Israel, it's yeah, I got it. We're on the same page. But anyway, so the first thing we learn is the most important fact to know about Trump. The reason you should love him is because he supports Israel. Second is God demands whatever sort of policy of the moment is God's will. Lindsey Graham, who just guessing, probably not a Bible scholar. And if he is, he's skipping over certain parts of the book. Excuse me. And the third thing to learn, and this really is the heart of Lindsey Graham, is that the Republican Party is doing what you voted for us to do. And that is, and I'm quoting now, cutting your taxes and killing all the right people.
What is that?
So that's the perfect distillation. Lindsey Graham is clever. He's hardly a genius. He's not like a philosopher or anything. But he has summed up the Republican Party that Donald Trump overthrew more precisely than any person I've ever heard in my life. Cutting your taxes and killing all the right people.
Wow, man.
Because that really is the crispest way to describe the marriage of libertarian economics and neocon foreign policy. Cutting taxes and killing. And if you think about it, who'd want to be associated with that? Not an argument for higher taxes. Higher taxes can be bad. But cutting taxes is not a virtue in itself. The point is, if people are overburdened by the tax system, if it's hurting them, and we're not getting a lot out of it, if it's growing like some completely impenetrable democracy that's hurting the country, which it is, by the way, then of course you want to cut taxes, I guess, to starve the cancer or whatever. You can make the argument. But cutting taxes itself is hardly a virtue. It's a contextual matter. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It totally depends. But in Lindsey Graham's simplistic but heartfelt formulation, cutting taxes is just a positive good always. And so is killing people. Killing people. You can sum up foreign policy. Killing people. Killing the right people. No, they got to be the right people. But killing people. Killing people is just a good thing. Like, have you killed someone today? Oh, good. You have? Okay, good. That's how he thinks of it. And if you take 3 steps back, I mean, you're sort of tempted if you've known Lindsey Graham like I have for 25 years. You're like, it's Lindsey Graham. He's always saying these provocative things. But if you think about it for a second, like, you're a sick fuck if you say something like that, much less if you believe it. Killing people? Have you ever met anyone who's killed someone? You probably have. You may be someone who's taken a human life. That's a very heavy thing. And it's something that even if you win the fight and walk away and the other man doesn't, it stays with you for life because it's the heaviest thing there is. And it's the most forbidden thing there is. It's the darkest thing there is. We don't create life. And except under very rare specific circumstances, we're not allowed to extinguish it because we're not God. And so if you're casually encouraging other people to kill, and if you're gleefully in front of an audience applauding like seals, bragging about the killing that you are doing, you're not on the team you think you are. That's really evil. And if that's what your party amounts to, cutting taxes and killing people, who's for that? I mean, some people are for it. All the ghouls in the room are for it. Killing people, okay. But most people, especially when they have time to think about it, like you're on a plane, you have time to stare out the window and think about what something means, you're repulsed by that because it's repulsive. It's the most repulsive thing.
Well, that's going to be it for this video, guys. If you guys want to watch the whole video, go to Tucker Carlson's channel. He's got over 5 million subscribers. Like watching his videos, really interesting videos too. So go check him out if you want to watch the whole video. And yeah, guys, if you enjoyed this video, you guys hit the subscribe button if you want. But that's about it. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.